My name is Patrice Livingston, and I'm a victim of the family court. And from 2008 until now, it's an ongoing case where I was involved in joint custody co-equal placement for all of my daughter's life until around age 12, and they ran to the court on an emergency, abused ex parte and emergency procedures absent any emergency. And she was headed to middle school. We were having a conflict about where she would go to school, but that didn't constitute an emergency to me. And in the early days, I believed in the courts and that we would solve it, and attorneys were collaborative and people would help you and you'd solve the problem and get something robust to solve your problems. I was extremely naive. I had no idea that anybody had even been to court. I didn't know what a guardian ad litem was. I didn't even know I had access to the papers in my court file. And it would be 2 judges and almost 10 months before I was even seen or heard by a judge, even though the file had grown thick with papers that had already been filed about me and against me that I had never even read. That right there started a question mark in my head, and I started to ask questions. So when we were assigned a guardian ad litem and I was charged thousands of dollars, when we were sent to a court-appointed psychologist immediately, this is all in the very first weeks, I said, why do we need a psychologist? Who went crazy? What's this about? And a series of things started happening, almost like in a sequence that everyone else seemed to know what the sequence was, but me. And so I started asking questions, including about the efficacy of the psychologist and her methods, about really what was the role of the guardian ad litem and how did he get chosen, or he was assigned off some list. Why did the judge make an emergency order on me without ever seeing me? I wasn't served, there was no summons. A lot of things happened behind closed doors. There were no transcripts. I really didn't understand. The first year was shock and awe because I didn't get what was going on. By the end of that first year, and we had tried to sort things out, and my ex and I, actually, we were in a domestic partner relationship for 7 or 8 years before we had a kid. The same gendered relationship, domestic partners, long time, owned a house. I was in the military, very private lives. We were both professional, highly educated. I had clearances. I was in the Air Force. We chose to have a child. I moved that my name change and the adoption, my daughter's birth certificate actually lists both of her mothers on her birth certificate as parent-parent. It doesn't say mother-father, it says parent-parent. And so it has Miley Wolf, it has Jackson Livingston Wolf as my daughter's name, and mine was at the time Patrice Livingston Wolf because I went to probate, took the Wolf name, so we had all the same family name so that my daughter would never have problems out in public doing that, whatever. So I ended up, after the first year of being legally abused, I didn't know what legal abuse was, I just knew that I felt abused, exploited, deceived. And I was easy to deceive because I'm a high-functioning autistic adult, so that's another twist we put in there. Okay, I'm one of those people, I'm very concrete, I like to write things down, I kept that, sort of a hidden thing throughout all my life. My domestic partner knew about that. She knew that I was one of those children that didn't speak until I was like 8 or 9 years old. Back in the day when they knew very little about autism or the spectrum or it being mild or severe or any of the things, the interventions that you need for someone that has to compensate for what is a lifelong neurological disorder. It's not a mental illness, it's a neurological disorder. The D stands for disorder. Autism spectrum disorder. My brother and I both had it. And I ended up being exploited by that. So not only was I exploited, we had a same gender domestic partnership, I was exploited by the tricks and the rules and the abuse of due process, both procedural and substantive. I was exploited in the context of my 2 invisible disabilities. I ended up disclosing the PTSD first. Later I exposed the ASD. Neither one of those things helped me. So being willing to cooperate and talk about my problems and say, look, that's not a reason to take someone's kid. So if you're an adult and then later you develop diabetes, you don't take someone's kid. So the reason, we were having conflicts that were all manageable. My daughter was headed to middle school. She's a gifted and talented student. I, as a nurturing, engaged parent in her life, was advocating for her advanced education. She's a gifted and talented student, played violin, went to the Summer Institute for the Gifted, At the end of 5th grade, went to Amherst College. At the end of 6th grade, went to Vassar College. At the end of 7th grade, went to UT Austin. This kid was on target to go to Bryn Mawr, but the court stopped all that because they said I was crazy. So my daughter had to pay for my outbursts. Why? Why are you punishing her when I'm advocating? This is what a good parent does. They advocate for their I insisted that my daughter had special needs as a gifted and talented student and wasn't getting those needs met. Now, the court completely failed to look at the fact that all my daughter ever knew was 2 loving homes. Because even though we were domestic partners for 7 or 8 years, we broke up at around 8, then Zini was born, not, into the 9th or 10th year. We were a family together for the first 2 years, and we broke up when she was 2, which would have been about 12 or 13 years for the adult relationship, but 2 years with the child involved. So from age 2 to age 12, a decade, all she ever knew was 2 loving homes, 2 large circles of extended family, grandmothers, cousins, whatever, summer vacations, 2 places. Every Monday, Wednesday, she was there overnight and was dropped off at school. I picked her up on every Tuesday and Thursday overnight, and we had every other weekend, and we split the holidays. And we did that amicably. Amicable, full joint custody, co-equal placement for a decade. We did something that no one ever does. And to me, it was so extremely irresponsible, unethical, and unscrupulous for the attorneys to go in and foment hostilities where there were none. Yes, we had conflict, but that was a product of things changing. It was a bad economy. I had lost my job. I was post 9/11 veteran. I had gotten called up, and I needed to make changes. I lost my home. And those types of things. My daughter was starting middle school. She was growing up and having a lot more activities. Most of her activities were centered in Providence. And I said, maybe it's time for a change. She should live in Providence during the school week, Monday through Thursday, and not keep doing the back and forth thing that we had done for 10 years, but we need to make a change. We needed to navigate a change. We didn't need to strike up false emergencies, pathologize someone, criminalize someone, tear this kid apart from the only thing she ever knew was 2 loving homes. Now she's ripped away from one loving parent, put with the other, and I'm put in 100% blackout. Why? Why? Because I started asking questions. The first year of litigation, why are we being sent to psychologists? Who's a guardian ad litem? Why are you coming to my home? Oh, by the way, Carrie Raffinelli, who's this woman that you're bringing to my home to do the home study? Oh, she's a supervisor for the court. Who's a supervisor for the court? It was his mother that he drags around to pretend that she's a supervisor of the court to intimidate families. I would find all these things out later. I would find out about the Gardner script. I would find out about the parental alienation that I was being charged with and didn't know. I would find out that the psychologist was paid by the court system on contract and was not a private person that we were sent to solve our problems away from the adversarial attorney, fomenting of hostilities. The judge doesn't understand what's going on. This is a weird family, 2 women, a female child. I don't know what's going on. So there was a lot of weirdness, because people just didn't get it. Rhode Island, we weren't married, but under the law, we were both her legal parents, period. We both had equal right to be engaged in her life. And of course, if you really want to go what's in the best interest of the kid, at age 12, age 13, that's all she ever knew was 2 loving homes her entire life. It was all she had memory and cognizance of. Why was that being disturbed? If they really cared about the kid, they would have kept her in her gifted programs. They would have kept her circling between both homes. They would have kept her in touch with the extended family and friends that she loves on both sides. But this court didn't do that. What the system shifted to was this targeting of one parent. And this is where I began to ask the questions. Ripping off of the papers, altering the thing. There's no transcripts. There's no hearings. It's taking place ex parte. There would be emergency hearings. I didn't know anything about them. I said, and the attorney would call me up, exploit me, send stuff in the mail, harass me on the phone. I was pro se. I was on and off being pro se. Very hard for me. Now we get to the issue. People would say, oh, well, Patrice, don't you see the problem? No, I don't see the problem. What's the problem? She has money. You do not. She's going to win custody. You will not. They're going to discredit you and you're going to be deemed crazy. And people would tell me what the script was. I didn't get it. People who had been through it told me what the script was and could tell me which chapter, Act 2, Scene 3, I was in. And I'm like, how do you know this? right? Well, because I had this attorney, this is common practice, this judge, that's like a, this is, you know, the script, Patrice. You're only in Act 2, Scene 3. Oh no, that I have 4 technical degrees. I'm an engineer, I'm a mathematician, I did pattern analysis for the military. I started to decode this. I wanted to, I'm like, oh no, when a bridge is broken and it's a piece of infrastructure, in society, we close the bridge down. We don't allow that, okay? So I started to decode everything, and this is where I started peeling apart the pattern. And I started finding out what guardian lives do, what the laws are that guardian don't write orders. But gee, this one did. He wrote an order without a hearing, without evidence, without appearance. He was signing things for the judge. We were sent to the psychologist. She was billing Blue Cross Blue Shield, but she was really being paid by the court. Oh, I'm sorry, she was mercenary. Oh, so the day in October 2009 when they took my daughter from me, that psychologist, Dr. Judith Lubner, who is now dead, says to me, oh, Patrice, ha ha ha, we're not taking Zini from you forever. We're just taking her for a little while. I was in a state of trauma. She was laughing at me. And then she tells me, well, there was a money problem. Ding. And therein lies the light bulb that went off in my head. What money problem? So I was put in a state of trauma, then I was supervised, then I filed a complaint with the disciplinary board, filed a complaint with the Department of Justice, filed a complaint with the FBI. In every door I went to, I was told no problem found. I'm like, somewhere there's a problem here because my daughter's life is disrupted. I'm being divested of my parental rights, if not legally, then at least tacitly. And I'm being told, and I'm being pathologized and criminalized in areas of civil law, absent any criminal activity, absent any substance abuse, absent any nexus of harm between me and my daughter, who has testified that since she wanted to live with me, her preference was actually to live with me, and continue to visit her other side, not exclusively to her other parent, not at all. No, she loved her mother, and but her preference had migrated or evolved to being an active medical school student where the center of all her activities were in Providence. I lived in Providence. Her other mother lived 30 miles away. She was tired of driving everywhere. She wanted to stay in Providence during the school week and be engaged as she should with her friends. And she was at an age where that should happen. I thought it was normal. They pathologized me for thinking that way, that I was, you know, creating a scenario to alienate her from her other mother, which was not the truth. But that was the way it was painted to the judge. So the entire case shifted to the corruption once I filed for ADA accommodations because they were provoking me into outbursts so they could say, see, she's crazy. They were exploiting me by not refusing to put anything in writing when I asked for it in writing repeatedly. Having me sign page 2 of something saying I agreed, ripping off page 1, going down the hall and snapping a new page 1 on top of the page 2 that I signed. I'm like, this isn't what I signed. I'd be back in court and they're like, you signed it, ma'am. What, you don't remember what you signed? That kind of stuff going on. A lot of details about the corruption. So when I wrote a 12-page affidavit saying I was abused, wrote to the Rhode Island Governor's Commission on Disabilities and said that there's malfeasance going on, went to the Department of Justice Special Litigations Office, wrote to the state police because Rhode Island has hate crime laws, and I believed that I was being discriminated against, not only my disability, but the gay case. My daughter is biracial. There's a bunch of things going on that just felt like so targeted to me. And then I was being provoked. I was being provoked outside the courtroom. They were following me. I would come out of my apartment and my tires would be flat, and I would be pulled over by the police for no reason. My mail would be taken. I was allowed to write to my daughter at camp, and they stole the mail. There were a lot of things that they did, and whenever I tried to bring those extrajudicial activities that were being done to me into the court to explain to the judge the way in which I was experiencing this sort of more comprehensive legal abuse, he just said I was unable to prove those things, so he would, it would feed into the whole thing that I was mentally ill. Send her to another psych eval. So I had the chief of psychiatry of the county hospital came and said, Patrice is, she went down the list. Let's eliminate everything Patrice is not. She's not psychotic. She's not schizophrenic. She's not bipolar. There's none of these things going on. Does Patrice have? She called it Asperger's. I really hate that term, but yeah, autism spectrum disorder. Yes. Okay. Is she suffering from post-traumatic? Yes. I think what's gone on here, the chief of psychiatry testified in that court and told the judge, I think what's gone on here is extremely abusive. It's very abusive. It's been very deceitful, very manipulative, and very exploitive of Patrice. She feels tricked. She feels deceived. They would call me up and tell me there's going to be a hearing at 2 o'clock. I would drive 1 hour, 2 hours round trip, try to get my 88, show up at the court. They go, ha ha ha, what hearing? There's no hearing today. I would drive all the way down there and there'd be no hearing. They did a lot of things like that to me. Like it would make your head pop off the list of details and abusive things they did to me week after week after week to try to make me explode, make me get hypervigilant, totally put me in a post-traumatic state of anxiety constantly. Plus, mind you, this was a bad economy. I was driving a taxi, trying to make ends meet. I'm a post-9/11 veteran. I lost my house. Now you took my kid. And even against all those odds, even in the middle of all of that, I applied for a PhD program to get to go back and rehabilitate myself as a post-9/11 veteran with technical degrees because the job market was bad, to get a PhD in systems engineering. And I won a full fellowship to Worcester Polytechnic Institute. Oh no, that wasn't good enough for these people. So in the middle of all of this, I get accepted to a PhD program to work on my PhD in systems engineering. And even that was turned into some kind of negative, crazy thing on my part. Anything I did was spun by the court into either it was pathological, or it was criminal, or it was dangerous, or I was an extreme threat to my daughter. She was taken from me in 2009. This is going on in the fall of 2009. 3 years of 100% blackout, absent any criminal activity. Incarcerated prisoners see their children more than I do. Not been allowed to talk to her on the phone. She was taken to me ostensibly over a harmful text message by a letter that the psychologist, now dead psychologist, who can't appear in court to be cross-examined, wrote to the court as her justification of my danger. Now, mind you, when I left the hearing that day, I drove straight to the psychologist's office because the judge said I could see my daughter in the psychologist's office once a week, 1 hour a week. So they start this whole supervised visit extortion thing. You have to pay for the privilege of seeing your child, right? Meanwhile, I saw her for 13 years, completely raised her co-equal, joint custody, nurturing parent. But now all of a sudden I need to be supervised 1 hour a week in the court-appointed psychologist's office. So I drive straight to the psychologist's office, which is on my way home because I live an hour from this courthouse. And I'm in her waiting room and her door is open, and who is she talking to? The judge. And I just left the courthouse and she's on the phone with the judge. Comes out, turns white, and I said, I'm here to make my appointment for the ruling he just gave you for me to see Zini once a week. I know who you were talking to. Dr. Lubiner. Don't you think it's inappropriate that you're on the phone with the judge and you didn't show up in court today, but you wrote a letter behind my back that you wouldn't give me a copy of that took my daughter from me? I'm in a state of trauma. Do you see anything wrong with this picture? That 3 months later, in January of 2010, I met up with folks at the BMCC, and I, for the last 2.5 years, have been fighting this corruption, doing research, getting FOIA requests, going to the state assembly, getting contracts, discovering, I have a copy of this doctor's being paid by a state contract, and the Chief Justice of the Family Court signing a 3-year contract from federal funds. I went to the FBI, I went to the state treasurer, I went to the governor, I went to the attorney general. You have no idea. Every door I knocked on, it said, who's accountable for here? Here's the problem. There's embezzling going on, there's corruption going on, there's racketeering going on, there's conspiratorial activity going on. I've been abused due process rights, I've been abused ADA, I've been abused civil rights. I've gone everywhere to get a redress. There are no statutes in the state for supervised visitation, but I'm being supervised for what reason? I'm not a harm to my child, there's no criminal activity, I'm not mentally ill, there's no finding of fact, there's no ruling of law. She has testified herself. The other side has not presented one witness in 4 years. The other side has not produced a single witness ever that said I harmed Zini. Not one. As a matter of fact, there's a weirdness because my ex and I were never married because Rhode Island is one of the few states in New England that does not still have the marriage laws. We're surrounded by all the other states that do have them. In the United States, there are 10 that either have strong domestic partner laws or outright marriage. I think it's 5 and 5 or 6 and 4, something like that, that actually have equal marriage, or they have some version of it. Rhode Island does not, and it did not, and we remained in a legally viable, equal position all that time. And at the time they took my daughter, had we still been in a domestic partnership, we would have been in that partnership for 20 years. Because we were going to remember, we were together for 12. Zini was, and then Zini was 2 at the time we separated. We did this for 10 years. So we were friendly for 10 more years. That's more than 20 years. 12 living together as domestic partners or as a family. 10 more doing the joint custody, work it out, professional women. She's, a physical therapist, I'm an engineer. We worked out, the job thing, the school thing, totally, without any legal intervention whatsoever. It was so completely irresponsible and unethical on every person involved in our case to bust that apart on this kid. We had done something extraordinary. And even the guardian ad litem said, you guys have done something that no court would ever even order. You guys did on your own. I'm like, yeah, so it's pretty remarkable. So can you help us? Stop harming us. Please stop harming us. No ethical psychologist, no ethical attorney, no ethical judge does this. Breaks what isn't broken. This was the source of my rage. And anytime I got angry, anytime I started asking questions, is this normal? What is this practice? What is the law? How did you come up with that conclusion? Why are you making these attributions against me? You don't even know me. Weird stuff like the home study stuff. I started questioning. I'm like, is this normal? They're like, no, Patrice, it's not normal. So I would go to attorneys and say, is this normal? They're like, no. Then when I was put on supervised visits in the spring of 2010 and told that the judge is not going to hear my case if I don't drop my mediation civil rights complaints about ADA and accommodations and stop provoking me, and it's a hostile environment, it's become a hostile environment. If you were working in that environment and they were doing that kind of thing to you, you can go to your employer and have a hostile environment complaint. That it's become a hostile environment. I was complaining that it was a hostile environment to me. I couldn't get any remedy or relief. This has gone on 2 years now. And so when I was first assigned to go on supervised visits, the judge himself in civilian clothes shows up at the coffee shop where I was supposed to have my supervised visit with my daughter and looks at me and waves. I tell attorneys this, is this normal? No, it's not normal, Patrice. Then why is it happening to me? Well, because you asked too many questions. You're not playing a good little victim. You didn't roll over. You're a victim who said, stop. Stop harming me. Please stop harming me. Stop doing this. I want to get away from, I wanted to mediate. I asked repeatedly to mediate. I even have the evidence where they agreed to the judge that we would go and mediate in the psychologist's office away from the adversarial process. The psychologist herself said, Patrice, you're trying to do collaborative law. The attorneys involved are doing adversarial law. And I said, well, what does that mean? I don't know what you mean. I was ignorant to this whole thing. My learning curve was steep and it was fast, but not fast enough because you remember, they were on a script. So even in one meeting, the guardian ad litem looked at the attorney and said, let's fast forward, because I started to catch on to what was going on. So he would say, fast forward, and he would move to another part of the script. And as I started to learn and meet other people, and I realized that the script, and then the script was codified, we got the documents, I did file the Freedom of Information Act, then I was harassed about that and retaliated upon because I was sent a bill for $4,237 or something that I asked for contracts. Why? I said, I didn't want to copy them. I want to sit in a room, you bring the boxes in and let me view the records. I just want to access the records and look at them for myself. Why? Because I'm a gifted person and I have, God blessed me with a beautiful memory and a beautiful brain, which is why I was highly cleared and critically skilled in the United States Air Force, and they didn't want to let me go. I shed my uniform to get away from DADT, don't ask and tell for those of you that know, to climb over the fence and be completely a civilian in order to litigate freely and openly in a public court in order to maintain my relationship with my daughter, who I had raised all her life until they took her from me. I was in a state of trauma. I remain in a state of trauma. 3 years, it's been 100% blackout. She's not allowed to talk to me. I have a quarter we're allowed to talk on the phone, but she gets harassed whenever she calls me. So we're still not talking. The mail is stolen. If I send a birthday card, it'll come back undeliverable. That type of thing. So and even, it was inhumane. There were a lot of other details. My mother was on life and death surgery. She was very close to her grandmother. I told my daughter about it. I was punished for crying on a supervised visit, so I got punished for that. Then my mother had 1.5 kidneys ripped out 2 summers ago. We didn't know she was going to live or die. I told my daughter, who at the time was 13, going on 14, was old enough to know about it. You better call your grandmother because she's facing this very serious problem. We don't know if she's going to make it. You're being sent away all summer. I have the audio and the transcripts where my ex sat in the hearing and said, I'm sending Zini away all summer on purpose to make sure she doesn't get to see Patrice. I'm sending her away to make sure she doesn't get to see her at all. And when my daughter came back, she testified to the judge. The judge made a finding of fact. The judge put me back in supervised visits. I refused supervised visits because it felt like extortion to me. I said, this is absurd. She's 14. The law in Rhode Island is that 14 and above, the general law is Rhode Island General Law 35, 14 and above can nominate their own guardian. So why would you supervise a 14-year-old if they can nominate their own guardian? That's abject, ludicrous pollution of rationality. Oh, but Patrice, you're a danger. So at every turn, my visitation, my reunification, every time I would win or be allowed to reunify with her, the attorneys and my ex and everybody else would thwart or undermine the judge's ruling. So I finally won in the fall of 2010, heading into the new year for 2011. So what they did was I went to hear my daughter play the violin. She plays beautiful violin at the state orchestra. I went to a public concert. They ran to court, said I was a danger, that I made a big stink, which I had a person with me. That wasn't true. And there was no, they filed a restraining order on me, even though I had won to be reunified with her. And I was so upset and so re-traumatized by that they default judged me. I didn't come. My 88 accommodations were in place. I went to my therapist's office. I cried on the floor. I was so re-traumatized by trying to reunite with my daughter after all this, 18 months already of the legal abuse. I finally made a gain. I've been through so much humiliation. They ripped my medical records in open court. They did all these things, hold me in contempt. You have no idea. They took the phones, every phone I ever gave my daughter they took, just everything. And I didn't show up for court that day because I was so symptomatic and so re-traumatized. I didn't show up. So instead of putting a temporary restraining order on me and continuing it or accommodating me and giving me a chance to explain what I was doing and what we're trying to do, he defaulted me 3 years maximum RO, pretty much to eviscerate the relationship. So he undercut his own ruling. Why? Because this was total Title 28 CFR retaliation because I had filed complaints against the judge and against the attorney. Because I had filed complaints with the Department of Justice, he retaliated on me. So it took me, because of my ASD, sometimes I post-process. I'm a little bit delayed in my processing, but I eventually get it. You may trick me, but I will eventually figure out what you've done and come back doubly angry. So if I seem okay with what you did at the time, you're exploiting me because I have ASD, and that's one of the easy ways that I get exploited because I'm very trusting. I believe people. I didn't realize that this level of inhumane treatment would go on. The bullying, the intimidation, the tricking me, and all that stuff. But it did. And so I unleashed all of 2011, unleashed even more. I filed with other women in the state. I gathered with other parents. We came together. We did a lot of activities. Filed Board of Health complaints against the psychologists, filed against the attorney who was up for judge, spoke at the Judicial Nomination Committee, filed FOIA requests, spoke out at the General Assembly, screamed even about to get the laws changed for the Freedom of Information request itself, that it wasn't strong enough that they were playing games with us. I stopped an abusive Title 15 change. Title 15 is domestic relations in Rhode Island law that the nonprofits were going to write to put these rebuttable presumptions on people that you're presumed crazy or whatever. I said, don't you understand that you're harming parents when you do this? I decoded the pattern of practice. We decoded a bunch of us worked together and got a piece of information over here, a piece of information over there, and we started putting the pieces together. Then it got worse because then I sued the state. I sued my ex in Superior Court for tort damages. I sued again in family court to go back to have my proper visitations with my daughter, to let her speak, because now she's 15. As of this filming, she's 16, and I still haven't seen her. It's been 3 years. She was taken from me 12 going on 13. She's just about 13. And I am crystal clear that what I have uncovered is even greater than what I thought. Fiduciary malfeasance, racketeering, federal funds being embezzled and laundered through the Rhode Island judiciary, probably not only the family court, but other family courts. I found it very interesting that when I filed in federal court, all of the Rhode Island District Court federal judges recused themselves from the case last summer, put the case in a state of emergency. It was sent to the New Hampshire district. The current judge on my case, Judge DeSegna, has spent all of 2011 denying me access to her court in order to file a motion to visit with my daughter, even though there was a finding of a fact, ruling of law, that I'm not a danger, and the plaintiff's motions to terminate my parental rights were denied in October of 2010. I remain now, per the current judge, as of May 2012, some kind of threat and some kind of danger to this child, in the judge's estimation. Even though she's 15, even though she's turning 16 and is going to be driving, I remain a threat. I believe the car is probably more of a threat to her, and public traffic is more of a threat to her than I am. But I'm a threat to her because I am incorrigible and recalcitrant about my views and my unwillingness to accept the perspective of the family court regarding this child's education. She was in K through 8 private school, gifted and talented programs all her life, and then was taken out of her 2 loving homes, put in one where she was unhappy, and sent to a large public high school where she's floundered and is no longer in gifted programs. They think that's fine. I don't think that's fine. But I'm the one who's registered in the statewide system as some sort of threat, carries criminal penalties. If I so much as sneeze the wrong way, I can be picked up, or, if they can falsely file me, and we proved it was fraud on the court, we had evidentiary hearings, and we had doctored and altered transcripts presented by the other side in court, such that this judge, who was not the first judge, I had to relive my entire hearing all over again. So everything that we had gone through from 2008 to the December of 2010, that 18-month period, I had to relive in the 6 months from this past Thanksgiving to May of 2012 with this new judge who didn't know all of this. And I had to relive the entire thing tenfold. I was more traumatized by what the court did to me between Thanksgiving and May of 2012 than I was in the 3 years prior, while I was learning and figuring things out and still being trusting and open to, come on guys, let's work this out. This is a bad economy, I'm driving a taxi, I got a new fellowship, I got a new apartment, can't we just reset? Zeeny's in 8th grade, she's going to high school, let's just, make a change and work on that together, away from the court, around the table. I believed that we would sit around the table and you air open, honest concerns, and you sort them out. That's what attorneys and psychologists are supposed to be professionals about. They're supposed to be experienced at sorting a conflict. They're supposed to be experienced at mediation skills. They're supposed to be experienced at, well, this is where the law is, or how you write an order. They should have been guiding us through that process. I'm now of the mind that the entire family court needs to be abolished. This also makes me dangerous. It's a very dangerous view, according to the powers that be. However, I'm an engineer. And if we had a crumbling road or a crumbling bridge or inhabitable building, we would condemn it. We would not allow people to occupy it or cross it, or traffic to continue to go from here to there across the bridge over troubled waters. We would put up orange cones, danger, danger, safety, safety, don't go that way. This is what I'm saying about the family court. Danger, danger, safety problem, don't go that way. You're taking your life into your hands. It's not the bridge over troubled waters that everybody thinks it is. It's not what it's going to do to you. It's going to harm you more than your whatever situation you already find yourself in. So when I say abolish, it's the engineer in me. This is an infrastructure. This is a public service. The courts work for us. We forgot this. The judges work for us. They're supposed to be public servants. They take an oath of office. And no engineer in their right mind, if you knew the bridge could no longer carry the capacity, would say, keep it open. It's a public harm. They'd say, shut it down and build a new one.